Hey guys, got a really good video here for today. Hopefully it's be pretty helpful. It's kind of different than what we're used to than the gameplay. It's more going to be focusing on an aspect of gameplay. As some people commented on the last video. I kind of asked you guys what you'd like to hear, and so today I'm going to deliver on that a little bit, hopefully, and talk about the handbrake turn feature. Uh, you've probably seen this in a lot of my gameplays, at least for in my light tank gameplay, and probably even to an extent in my medium tanks as well, some of the faster ones. It's a feature that was added roughly, I want to say, less than 2 years ago in one of the patches, in the physics changes, and the first day it came out, I immediately noticed a difference. It immediately improved my ability to circle tanks basically and be a more evasive target on the battlefield basically for the enemy to hit. So I'm just going to go over where you can find this at. It's under the game settings, under controls, and there's different ways you can use this. I prefer the default setup. That's just kind of, I've gotten used to it. It's not the best setup. It's going to be based on what you like to use. The handbrake is not actually on the D-pad cruise control setup. Don't know where it's at, For the driver setup, it's actually holding both left and right trigger down at the same time. That's weird to me, but again, it's all personal preference and how you like to set this up. Shoulder swap, it is up on the D-pad. Little different. Like I said, on the default, it's down. It's just kind of a matter of fact of what you're used to, what you like to, what controller configuration works for you. It's all going to vary person to person. Here's the designated handbrake one, which puts it on the left bumper. I think this is a fair amount of people probably use this setup. I've never actually tried another setup, and that's just because I'd end up eventually probably getting it, but I'd end up mixing buttons around and all that after 5 years of playing with the same exact setup on my controller. So it'd be a little difficult for me to switch personally. But yeah, like I said, it's just up to your personal preference. It's kind of the same way I felt with the map. This one puts it on the A button, actually, on the D-pad cruise control option. It's another one I'd be curious to try, but I feel like I'd be like, how do I swap ammo? Why am I not swapping ammo? That's just me personally. They're all valid setups. Like I said, it just varies person to person. But I think the two that could be most effective would probably be the one that puts it on the A button or one of the bumpers. If you want the less awkward hand motion, I basically have to, with my right hand when I'm playing, go over with my right thumb over to down on the D-pad. It's awkward, but I've gotten used to it. Like I said, it's just something over the 2 years that it's been in the game, I've gotten used to it. Here's a little view of my settings also, if people are curious. You saw my, I keep aim assist off. I check off horizontal stabilization, helps me with aiming and sniper view when I'm on the move, basically. I also saw my sensitivity for a second if you were paying attention. They're very low. That's been my way for most games ever. Because I used to play like Call of Duty, all the shooters when I was younger, quote unquote, 23. But yeah, I just prefer the lower sensitivity. It's just me. It's all personal preference kind of things. The application of this, like I said, it's mostly the light. It just helps you be more maneuverable. You can use it to dodge and weave out of cover quickly, and I'll go into that. I got a lot of footage up ahead of me using this in a training room and comparing it to two different styles of tanks. First is going to be in the LTTB, and then the second one is going to be in the Turtle. And they're both light tanks, so I'm stepping away from using the handbrake in something like mediums, where you can do that as well. Especially faster mediums like the Batchat, even the Leo 1, I guess, possibly. But it really helps in the Batchat also. It's the main tank that springs to mind for me. But light tanks is really where the feature shines, I'd say. So, a lot of people, I don't know if it's just been maybe a forgotten feature. I don't see it used that much when I'm playing, whether it be other lights or, you know, any other tanks. I don't see it being used personally. Now, here's something I don't recommend doing very often, and that is going full speed like that, and then just hitting the handbrake as hard as possible while turning. Main reason is because it just gets your tank decelerated really, really quickly, and your turret ends up all over the place. It's not great to just, when you're going in a straight line, just to nail that handbrake and just do a full U-turn in the middle of the field, especially if you're trying to do that for like dodging shots. It's not recommended to do that. The dodging shots, I'd say it's risky to use the handbrake to try to do that, because if you just slam on the handbrake to try to time the turn with the actual motion of the handbrake yourself, and you're wrong, and you're still in the an open area, and you're not using it to get behind cover, you're decelerating yourself to a stopping point, and then you're going to have no speed, no momentum, and then you're just going to be an easy target, and then they're going to hit you, and you're going to take damage. So you don't want to try to do that. I generally don't. It's something that's very risky, and if you can time it well, it's cool when it happens, don't get me wrong. That you can just do that like Neo move, and the guy fires, and then you immediately do the handbrake. It's cool, but I don't recommend trying it like super, super often. Instead, I prefer to use it more so in the close quarters type fighting, not when I'm ramming a VK. But I use it more on a smaller, with a little bit of touch. I don't slam on it usually. I'll do it when I'm slower speeds, and I'll do it to change direction fairly quickly too. But I really like to use it to, like that, instead of having to do a wide U-turn there and possibly not getting a shot back on that guy, to be able to just do a really quick turn like that and then get my gun back around on him. Another thing I really like to do, and hopefully I can get an example soon. I think I did this for 15 minutes. So, something you don't want to use it on is stuff like examples of tanks you don't really want to use the handbrake turn on. Is, I would say, mostly mediums and other lights. And in the sense that I'm saying that, is that, again, you're cutting your speed. So, if you're in a knife fight with another light tank, I generally don't use the handbrake. Just because, again, you lose that speed, you lose that momentum, and usually then you're going to get just RBRT'd and you're a sitting target, and it makes it much, much easier. That's something I like trying to squeeze through little gaps like that. It didn't work out like there, but I think like on the last video, that Bulldog video, I squeezed using the handbrake right between like an FCM and a cliff face. And here you also saw, I think I did it, I got behind these tanks, and instead of having to make a long turn, I was able to just cut around the corner and then immediately handbrake and get in behind them and use them as cover. So it helps you just cut that turning radius way down and use cover that's more accessible to you, basically. It's a great feature for that. It's also something like that. So say you're excuse me, you're fighting something like a T-28 Prot that doesn't have a fully traversable turret. You can drive straight, try to avoid the shot, or just time it to where you come out, and yeah, you get the idea there. And basically, you can time it so when you hit the back, like you go right to the edge of his the rear of his tank, you can do a handbrake turn to the left or right, whatever direction, and then do a full one, and you can get your whole tank just facing right on his rear, and he can't get to you, basically. So it just helps getting your gun on sight better. It also helps with changing direction in juking enemies through the use of the mini-map, basically. So you think I'm going to go and commit and go up here. So no. Instead of doing a long turn there and probably getting shot in return, I can cut that real quick and get out of there without taking a shot, basically. It's also really good if you're in like clutch situations. So say you're in like a 1v3 or something like that, and you're spotted, and there's a tank kind of nearby you, and there's like a couple ways you could actually escape. You could feint like you're going one way in a dead straight line, and then as soon as you get unspotted, just crank that handbrake and go the other direction. It's a good idea. Again, it just helps. Fake them out quicker, basically. And like I said, it's just useful for a multitude of things. Again, the biggest thing I like to use it for is fighting these like heavy tanks, and it's circling that enclosed thing. Let me get on the topic of that, basically. So if you're circling something and you're going, like, the first time you're going to go up to try to do the circle, you can drive by them and don't cut the handbrake all the way, basically, is what I'm saying. Just use a little tiny bit of it. You don't want to just mash it down. I'll just do it in little, like, taps. I'll just tap it a little bit, and then my tank will turn a little bit, but it won't do the full, like, 180. It'll just make the corner that I'm circling him on tighter. And that's better for tanks like, say, like a Tiger 2, like tanks that have slower turret traverse, to where you can actually still outturn them even if you cut speed, but you lessen your turning radius, basically. So it's better for that kind of thing, rather than, say, fighting other lights or something like that, where it can be useful, but more for getting behind cover of, like, buildings or something like that. If you need to just cut behind a building and get the cover real quick, it's better for that kind of situation. And this is kind of where I'm going to talk about, like, that infighting. Like, this guy doesn't have a turret that goes all the way around. So I'm just going to keep doing these little tiny cutting maneuvers, so my traverse is just a little tiny bit better. So it's not really noticeable on the gameplay, but you can kind of tell, I think, that my tank is, like, stopping ever so slightly. And it's not me just stopping and turning, it's me hitting the gas on it, but also hitting that handbrake at the same, like, at intervals, so that I stay right behind him, rather than me doing the long turning circle and then he is able to get his gun back around on me. That's what it helps in that, is that you can stay close into them instead of having that wide turning circle. And again, the big thing about this is you have to also be knowledgeable to an extent on what type of tanks you're facing, in that what their turret traverse is like, what their track traverse is like. So you don't want to, like, go and say try to circle and do this to a like, I don't know, any kind of medium or something that can turn really fast. It's a heavy, because you'll get screwed, because they'll be able to turn with you and you'll find yourself losing hit points where you shouldn't have. Now, that was in something, the LTTB, which has a great, it's extremely maneuverable for a light tank. It has a lot of good momentum for it. The track traverse is a little sluggish, if my memory, but the speed of it, it's good for it. That's what I like about it. That's why you see me use it a lot when I'm playing the LTTB. But next is a tank that's a little different. It's still a light tank, but the Turtle has a much worse traverse, and like an agility factor to it. So you kind of see how I'll use that differently. And the fact that it's not just a single shot gun, it's also a third howitzer. So you can kind of see an idea of how I use that in combination with something like T-49 Tusk. Yeah, the Turtle, the derp, the derp HE lights, and that just involves. I don't think I actually use it here, but what I'll do is if I know I can pen the rear of a tank like that, and I need to get my gun onto him quickly, I'll race by him, nail that handbrake turn, and get it so my gun is facing parallel right into his rear. So sort of like I talked about earlier with like fighting like a T-20 prod or something like that, where my tank will be facing the same way that his tank is, and then I can just derp him right in the rear, and it's gonna pen rather than trying to just hit him in the side and then it gets eaten by tracks or something like that. It's just an easy penetration, and it's just a good combination with these derp lights, and it's how I usually like to kind of get my damage in these. It's one of the ways I do. Something I like to avoid, you really want to avoid, I wish this map, I thought the beach would be a little more bad terrain-wise on these maps, but unfortunately it really wasn't. And there you go. A little bit of a handbrake, see the turret get right on line, and then boom, he's dead. Is avoid doing this in bad terrain, because it just won't work for you. If you have like something like the Lakeville Valley and you're trying to do a handbrake turn, you're going to find yourself very SOL very quick. And that's just because that factor of, oh, you lost all that momentum is amplified because, one, your momentum in the first place wasn't that much to begin with. So if you're going to cut it and try to use the handbrake on the valley of like Lakeville, where the terrain resistance is god awful, just be prepared for your tank to be very, very slow afterwards. And see here, just I can outturn his barrel by using that opposite way handbrake, and it's easy. Like, not easy, but it requires practice of how much you want to press down on that handbrake. It just takes practice of just getting that right feeling. And once you do get the idea down of how much pressure to use and when to use it, it's really a great feature for helping you take out tanks and stuff like that. Another thing that's less oriented about like killing actual tanks and doing damage, and more about positioning with the handbrake, is you just saw me go up to that position, which I use fairly often in my lights when I'm actually playing this in random battles, is that you can use it to get in a position much quicker, or get your tank turned around. And you'll see me do this a lot. So say like I need to go up to a bush, and I know if I get spotted I can get away quickly. I'll go up to the bush at full speed, then hit that handbrake turn, and then get turned around in the bush very quickly. So that if I need to run away, I don't have to sit there in the bush doing a full 360 very slowly, and then I'm in position. Rather, I can come up to the position, hit the handbrake, and then back to the bush a little bit if I need to. Just a quick tip for positioning and what I like to do. One thing you want to avoid is hitting it near surfaces, or where there's bad terrain and you're going very full speed, because then this can happen. That's why I try to avoid using it, especially when I'm going full speed over very rough terrain, because you can very easily flip your tank using the handbrake, because you're just shifting all the momentum to one side of your tank, basically. So you kind of want to avoid that, personally. Just watch the terrain you're on. If you're near a cliff or something like that, just be aware of where the momentum's going to carry you. And just be kind of cognizant of your surroundings, basically. Don't just watch where you're going and what you're doing with your tank, because you are shoving a lot of weight around, even if it is a light tank. Like I said, I've gone over a few things now, but it's really helpful for just a lot of things, whether that's positioning, getting the rear of enemy tanks, getting that little extra turning circle, tightening it so you can circle like heavy tanks and stuff like that, and keep their guns off of you. So it's a really good feature. Like I said, it just requires a lot of practice, and you'll eventually get it down. It can also be used, like I said, in other light tank other classes besides light tanks. But there are two that it can't really. It's not the Handbrake per se where it's used, and that is artillery and then tank destroyers. And in those classes, it only it locks up one of the tracks, and you'll turn a little quicker, but it's not gonna turn your tank completely sideways. It's not the Handbrake. It just locks up one of the tracks, which sounds like the same thing, sort of. But I tested it with the E25, which is a really fast TD, and all it does is just lock up the left track, and then you'll turn slightly fast, you'll turn sharper but slower. It's weird. It's not something I really ever use when I'm playing TDs, even something like that. So just be aware that you can't do handbrake turns in an E25 on console. It's not a thing. Probably for good reason, to be fair.
Ready to fire on target.
A little bit, but you saw me early. I think it was right before I went to one of those buildings, and I did that positioning thing I talked about, where I slammed on the brakes right before I got to the building, and then I was able to only poke my turret out instead of having to go up to the position, turn around, and do all that. I was able to just come up to the building and just, press down on my D-pad setup, and yeah, get in a position that's more favorable for me, not taking damage, and me able to escape the position if I need to much quicker, rather than having to do all that otherwise. So overall, I hope this all helped a little bit. If there's some other features you want me to talk about, please let me know. I know there are some other things that people wanted me to kind of address, and I have some other ideas for stuff like this, but hopefully it helps. It's just my thoughts on it. I'm not the huge stats guy. Something I may talk about in a video is my mindset of how I play and how it kind of differs from some other people's that I play with. I think Jack talked about this in his latest video. We talked about it on stream, about how I kind of do things naturally. They just kind of come. I don't think about things too much when I'm playing. I just kind of do it. I know that may sound weird, but if I start thinking and overthinking things, then that's where I end up messing up, rather than just playing. Versus Jack, he has to think all these things out, and it's just different. So hopefully I'll maybe do something on that, and I will catch you next time. See ya.